Hello, and welcome to Take the Stand Inclusive Leaders. I'm Dana Denis-Smith. I'm the founder and CEO of Obelisk Support, a legal services business, and the founder of the First 100 Years Project, which celebrates the achievements of women in law. I'm on a mission to make the legal sector a more inclusive place. And so I've invited legal industry leaders who also care about inclusivity to have a conversation with me. This episode, I'm talking to Sharon Kahanov, General Counsel for Great Britain and Ireland at Siemens plc. Welcome, Sharon.
Hi, Dana. Welcome. Glad to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you for joining me. I'm just going to start with my first question, which I ask all of my guests. What does inclusive leadership mean to you?
Inclusive leadership means learning from others. It means, just looking around and to see what I can do for others and what can others do for me. That's what inclusivity means for me. I mean, it's the very basic meaning of exclusivity. We're all different, and I'm different as well. And I think it's something that you need to look for and you need to receive. So for me, it's just this, interplay between getting and receiving. Is what inclusive leadership means for me.
That's brilliant. I love it. I wanted to ask you next, what do you think are the top qualities of an inclusive leader? I mean, I'm thinking more about, two, three key qualities that you think we would like to have visibility of, in terms of what we look for in an inclusive leader.
So I think first quality should be curiosity, because you need to be curious in order to, to understand these nuances, to look for them. And once you found them, to really see how you incorporate it into, the whole structure that you're aiming to build. So, and you cannot really be curious if you don't have this humility within you, because, we don't know anything. There are so many things that we can learn from others. And you will be on a mission to really look for inclusivity in others if you really are not shy to ask the questions, to just solve vulnerability, to realize that you don't know anything and to project it, because this is how you elicit some honest answers from the people around you. And this is how you maybe start a proper conversation about inclusivity. And I think the third thing that we need to do is really learn a little bit about it, because we are not aware of what's in there and what's out there. And I think you also need to learn to be willing to learn and understand and just gather knowledge, be it listening to podcasts, reading newspapers, speaking to people, so you have a better understanding what to look for. So these were for me the three keys. So it's humility, it's knowledge, and it's curiosity.
Brilliant, because my next question is about an example of your inclusive leadership in practice, if you're able to illustrate and bring your, I'm sure, three qualities to life.
So it's not a secret. You can hear my accent that I'm not from here. And I was surprised, but what a nice welcome I got when I first came here. And it was in the middle of lockdown one, and I didn't really know what I was doing here. And I didn't know anyone from my team almost, other than two or three people. And I decided to just look and, and kind of reciprocate that. And the team needed some building and it needed some rounding, because, Siemens was in a different position there and I was in a different position. So the idea was to bring the people together, and you had lots of different voices, people who were in different age brackets, and of course the rest, the different nationalities, gender. There were so many other topics and characteristics where people differed from one another. And the idea was to bring the team together, to make sure that no one is shy to say anything, that everybody feels, that it's the safe space for everyone, basically, to say whatever they want, in order to create a better team and bring ourselves together. And this is what I was trying to do. I didn't, spend much time in the UK other than 3 years beforehand on a completely different, in a completely different role. So for me, it was just, to have one-to-one with people, to understand them, to see where they are from, what they're doing, what their goal is. Because if you really want to be truly inclusive, you cannot just, implement a blanket measure just because you want to enhance, I don't know, gender equality. You really need to understand what the team needs and what the individual needs in order to create, happy people and proper team. So just having one-to-one with people, having, proper conversations with people, just, let go of this, I'm the leader here, I'm the manager, just speaking to the people, on eyes level and trying to see what's necessary. And I think people quite appreciated that. I think it's something that maybe is not done enough, just to have this, informal conversations, one-to-one, direct channel, just to speak to people until you really understand what's going on. So I think that was the first step that I took, and I think I'm trying to still incorporate it into my leadership, in my everyday leadership. I don't want to, to do something else because I think we still need it. So that's my 50 cents on this one.
I think it's great. My next question really is around your career and your experience, because very often in my conversations, people talk about pivotal moments in their career that made them the inclusive leaders they became. So, is there an example from your journey to date where you could share with us an example of inclusive leadership that really influenced your career journey? And why do you think it matters so much?
I think it's not a secret that maybe you and I grew up in a slightly different climate, where people behave differently to other people in the workplace, and you remember this. And no matter what great law firms we happen to work in, or companies, at the end of the day, it's just those moments that our bosses speak to us in a certain way, or we experience something that we said, this is something I want to take with me, or this is something I definitely don't want to take with me and change. So for me, in as much as I also had role models, I also had role models as to actually how not to run a team and how not to treat people. And it's just bits and pieces, really. It's the odd comment that, was not okay. It's the odd, I can give an example. I was in a bereavement period because of something that happened to my family, and I didn't get the space that I thought back then that I needed. I was exposed to some mild harassment in the workplace, and it's something that I decided that I never wanted to experience again. But I also, have positive role model. When I started my work in Germany, I hardly knew any German, and back in the day, the boss was very inclusive. And actually, he just spoke German very slowly to me because he realized that speaking English to me would be even worse. It will be just giving up. It will show me that he gives up on me, and he didn't want to do that. On the other hand, he didn't want me to feel completely uncomfortable, so he just, tried to speak German, slowly, and, in an accent that I understand, and just work with me a little bit, I think, until I got, enough confidence to speak German in the way that he did. So these things, I mean, it's just moments of people's behavior that you record. And then you think, when I'm a leader, once it happens, I want to record and do this one or two or three things. And this is what I'm trying to do.
And I like the fact that you're giving us kind of the examples of moments and a kind of collection of them, because my next question is really about barriers and why do we still have them around, creating a more inclusive culture, especially in the legal profession. And it does feel like a lot of the change would also come in little parcels of moments. What do you think are the biggest barriers that we're still facing to create a more inclusive legal profession?
I think the legal profession is special because you need to really be highly skilled in what you do, and maybe there is an aura around this profession as to it fits only a certain profile of a person, and maybe due to historical reason it was only a certain population and certain people that belong to a certain class or whatever that really managed to do it. In the days to open it up. The day is to open it up, but still keep it, to the standards that we know. And it's the balance, I mean, you really want to be open, but on the other hand, you really want to be professional. Now, how do you marry both? And sometimes I find that maybe the best way, and it really depends on which diversity characteristic we're talking about, the best way is just really press on one part of the equations and leave the other, and vice versa. So, for example, if we look, for example, at age, if you look at, for example, the age characteristic, maybe the idea is to let people do what they've always done, to be focused a little bit less on diversity, whereas on other topics, on other diversity characteristic, maybe there is, a necessity in really drilling a little bit deeper into it and to see why you're lacking women, why you're lacking I don't know, people from a certain ethnic group and so forth. I mean, what are these, and what it really can serve you? Because just again, to implement, a measure just for the sake of implementation's sake is also not something that we want to do. So looking at the team, looking what you need to do, looking where you need to, push and pull. I think this is the main, this is the main challenge, really, how you really get this balance, and then once you got it, how do you restore it?
Yeah, and I agree, because that's basically the part of the idea of leadership is how you prioritize. What is it that you are prioritizing at any given time? And, not everything is a priority, but with that in mind, because obviously leadership is important in creating and changing culture. What do you think we should be doing more of to improve inclusive leadership?
I think we really need to remind ourselves what inclusivity is, and we really need to somehow remind ourselves to do it and to seek for it, because many people sometimes tend to, enjoy what they've already achieved, so far, and just, not thinking whether it's important or not. We always need to really see where we are compared to where the rest is. And I wouldn't necessarily advise on very hard KPIs, but sometimes it's just good to look around and to see where we are. As I said, sometimes the legal profession suffers from overimportance, self-importance. We think that, we have enough women in the profession, so that's fine. But I mean, we really need to look into a little bit more, to seek the more nuanced picture and to see where we can do more, because clearly, I mean, we're still not there. But you really need to be always aware of inclusivity in order to look for it, and to really, talk to people, just engage in discussions. I mean, don't be shy. People will answer if you ask the right question. Even if you ask the wrong questions, at least they will appreciate if you ask. So don't just sit there, resting on your laurel and thinking, oh, I have, I don't know, 50-50 or 30-70, I'm fine. Try to really understand what else is that they need to do, because, the team will tell you if things are not right, and the market will tell you if things are not right. So why won't you just be a little bit more proactive and look for it yourself? So we need to be more proactive. We need to look for it. We need to, as I said, as a precondition to understand where we are and to have this curiosity to really engage in the right discussions with people, and in order to really to achieve a true improvement, because keeping on, virtue signaling and talking about it is just not enough. People don't really appreciate it anymore. You really need to start backing yourself with actions. So talking and trying to understand and showing that you have, some data-backed decisions, and you are, acting according to some reasoning is a good start.
That ties very nicely with my next question, which because I still want to focus on leadership, and I agree with you about awareness and all of that. But what should a leader ask themselves if they want to become a more inclusive leader? So what is the one question that stirs in us that kind of awareness, I guess? And then obviously we need to ask questions of others, but what is the one question we should ask ourselves?
It's a tricky one, because we all have, we're all a little bit programmed. We all have our own barriers. We all have our own priorities. We all see diversity and inclusion, in our own glasses. And, we have the culture and the country where we come from, and, the community where we live in. So for me, it's very important, especially being here, coming from a completely different mindset, is, do I really look enough? Do I really understand enough what's going on here? Because I'm leading a team here, and their mindset should be different. So how do I manage to somehow bring my knowledge up to speed so I understand and can really talk to them in their own language? This is not always easy. So in order to be aware of and understand what the team really needs, I always need to fight with my own barrier, so to speak, to make sure that I just jump over them. So how do I manage to lower my barrier in order to understand better what other people need? And there is sometimes a huge gap between the two. So this is what I'm trying to always be mindful of.
Very true. We're coming to our last question, and it is about role models. And you did kind of touch very briefly earlier in our chat about it, but the role models that I'm looking for here, any one or maybe more than one, they don't have to be real, they can be from films, but Who was your role model and why?
Who was my role model? Again, I think it was a collection of various people. Because my family accounts for some, but not for everything. My work colleagues and my bosses accounted for some, but not every. So I think it's just an amalgamation of various people. Unfortunately, it happened like that, but I've never really had a sponsor or a mentor. So I cannot really, hold on to someone specific in my life. And I wish I could, but I didn't, which, I mean, it is what it is. Maybe it was better this way because I literally had to go and start looking for things. Plus, my first leadership role happened quite as a surprise to me. So I didn't have the time to build myself and my capabilities to really ease into it. So it happened quite fast, actually. So it's just an amalgamation, a combination of people, be it people I knew from childhood or my family, people that I got to know when I worked in Germany, a specific partner I worked for when I was a partner in my ex-German law firm, was also there. So yeah, it's just a mix of people really, and for me, it's not about the person; it's about my interaction with that person and what that person said or did to me that I take. It's at the end of the day, we live from stories. At least this is how I live from stories, and I just need to bring them together in order to make sense of what I do. So it's just a string of role models, really, broken down into specific stories. Hope it makes sense.
It does make sense, and it's really lovely. I agree with you. I think role models are made up of many stories, and we don't need to search for one particular individual. And thank you so much, Sharon, for joining me today. And to our viewers, I hope you found this conversation interesting and useful, and that it's given you plenty of ideas for making your workplace, your team, and your organization more inclusive. To find more conversations on inclusivity, you can subscribe to my YouTube channel, Obelisk Support, or connect with me on LinkedIn, searching Dana Denis-Smith and heading to my video section. If you have any questions or feedback, I'd love to hear from you. You can get in touch at d.denis-smith@obelisksupport.com. Thank you for listening to Take the Stand, Inclusive Leaders, and see you next time.